So if you weighed, like, every single living animal on Earth,
Oh, man.
yeah, every human, every insect, the blue whales, all the birds, we barely even register.
Yeah.
Like, we amount to a rounding error.
Right. It's wild to think about.
It is, because 80% of all living matter on this planet is plants. We're talking about 450 gigatons of carbon. We're essentially just guests crashing on their green couch. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive.
I love that analogy. It completely reframes how you look out a window. We just process a lawn or like an oak tree as this static green background scenery.
Yeah, just the wallpaper of life?
Exactly. Just scenery against which the actual action takes place. But the reality is we're living inside a highly dynamic, hidden empire that basically runs the globe.
And to really explore that empire for you today, we've pulled together a massive stack of sources. We've got comprehensive botanical encyclopedias, cutting-edge physiological journals, and some truly fascinating historical timelines.
There's a lot of ground to cover.
For sure. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely shatter that illusion of stillness. We're going to examine how plants actively engineered our atmosphere, how their internal machinery rivals advanced fluid dynamics, and how they perceive the world with extreme precision.
Right. Entirely without a central nervous system.
Which is just mind-bending.
It really is. But, to appreciate the sophistication of those mechanics, it helps to realize just how completely blind humanity was to them for most of our history.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we struggled for centuries to understand what plants were actually doing, mostly because we were looking right past the invisible forces at play.
The historical bumbling is actually quite funny when you look back at it. Like, in the 1600s, you had this Belgian chemist, Jan Baptiste van Helmont.
Oh, the willow tree experiment?
Yeah, exactly. So he wants to know how a tree grows.
Yeah.
Right. He plants a willow sapling in a pot, weighs the soil perfectly, and then he just waters it for 5 years.
5 whole years.
5 years. And the tree grows massive, but the soil only loses like a couple of ounces. So he naturally concludes that the entire mass of the tree came strictly from the water he poured in.
He completely missed the air.
Right. He misses the fact that the tree is literally pulling carbon dioxide out of the air to build its trunk. It's like watching a magic trick, and you're meticulously tracking the magician's left hand for 5 whole years.
And completely missing what the right hand is doing.
Exactly.
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's a perfectly executed experiment, but it yielded an entirely wrong conclusion.
Because they just didn't get it yet.
Right. 17th century science just lacked the conceptual framework for, invisible gases turning into solid mass. It took another 100 years before Joseph Priestley started his experiments in the 1770s.
The bell jar guy.
Yeah, putting mint sprigs into sealed glass jars with mice and candles. And he realized the candle and the mouse would, he called it, injure the air, meaning they depleted the oxygen. But the plant could restore it.
Proving oxygen exists. But wait, let me push back on Priestley's conclusion here.
Yeah.
Because exactly when did sunlight become part of the puzzle?
Ah, good question.
Because if Priestley just said the mint plant restored the air, his logic assumes the plant is just acting like a passive filter, like a biological Brita pitcher or something.
That's a great way to put it.
Did anyone realize the flaw there? Because if that were true, a plant locked in a pitch-black closet would purify the air just as well as one in a sunny window.
That is the exact blind spot in Priestley's work. And it took a Dutch scientist, Jan Ingenhousz, to figure it out shortly after.
Okay.
Ingenhousz realized Priestley was missing the actual engine of the process, which is sunlight. He submerged plants in water and observed that they only produced bubbles of oxygen when they were in direct sunlight.
Oh, wow. So shade just shuts it off.
The moment he moved them to the shade, the biological engine shut down. The bubbles stopped. So light wasn't just a condition, it was the fuel.
Wow.
And then, Jean Sinnebier comes along and identifies the CO2 absorption part of the equation.
Okay, so the pieces are coming together.
Slowly, yeah. And finally, Julius Robert Mayer in the 1840s links the whole thing to the first law of thermodynamics.
Ah, converting light energy into chemical energy.
Exactly. Which eventually led to Cornelis van Niel's modern 1930s equation that we all learn in middle school.
Right, but reciting that middle school equation, CO2 plus water equals sugar and oxygen, it really doesn't do justice to the actual thermodynamic miracle happening inside the leaf.
Not at all. I mean, what we're really talking about is quantum excitation.
Sounds like sci-fi.
It kind of is. When you look at a green leaf, you are looking at Millions of microscopic solar panels packed with chlorophyll, and when a photon of sunlight travels 93 million miles across space and strikes that chlorophyll molecule, it hits an electron, exciting it into a higher energy state.
And that highly energized electron is, like, incredibly unstable, right?
Uh,
It wants to release that energy.
Exactly. But the plant doesn't let it just release as heat. It forces that excited electron down a biological circuit board, an electron transport chain.
Okay, I'm following.
And as the electron moves, the plant harvests its energy to build chemical bonds. But here is the brilliant part. The chlorophyll is now missing an electron.
Oh, right. It needs a replacement to keep going.
Yes. So it literally rips a water molecule apart, steals its electrons, and discards the leftover oxygen atoms as a waste byproduct.
That is insane. That oxygen byproduct is the very reason we can breathe. Like, they are physically tearing apart water at a molecular level using the kinetic energy of light,
Yeah.
and then binding those electrons to carbon dioxide from the air to manufacture solid glucose. They're basically eating thermodynamics.
They really are. But, that remarkable ability creates an enormous logistical problem.
How so?
By relying on solar power and invisible gases, a plant forces itself to become highly specialized. Think about a 300-foot-tall redwood tree.
Okay.
Your leaves are way up in the canopy, catching the sun and making sugar, but your roots are hundreds of feet underground, sitting in the dark, gathering the water needed to keep that quantum reaction going.
Right. And they don't have a heart. There's no cattle pump to move anything. So how on earth do they distribute water across a massive physical body against the force of gravity?
The answer lies in their vascular tissue, specifically a specialized network called the xylem. And it operates on principles of fluid dynamics that are just almost hard to fathom.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the sources describe this in a way that completely upgrades the usual "it's a giant straw" metaphor we usually hear. Let's look at the actual physics. Imagine a skyscraper's plumbing system, but one that operates entirely on physics and specialized tubes rather than, like, electricity and pumps.
Right.
So you have a chain of microscopic magnets stretching 300 feet into the air. Water molecules are highly cohesive, they stick to each other, and they also stick to the walls of the microscopic cellulose tubes that make up the xylem.
Yeah, this is the cohesion tension theory. As the sun beats down on the canopy, water evaporates from tiny pores in the leaves, which is a process called transpiration.
Right, and as that top water molecule evaporates into the air, it acts like the top magnet in our chain getting pulled away. Because of that cohesion, it physically yanks the water molecule beneath it up to take its place. And that one yanks the next, exactly, all the way down to the roots. The evaporation of a single drop of water at the top of a redwood creates a negative pressure that physically pulls a continuous 300-foot-long molecular chain of water up out of the soil.
Yeah.
No moving parts.
Just solar heat and the chemical properties of
Yeah.
water, and operating parallel to the xylem is the phloem.
The food pipe.
Right. If the xylem is the water main pulling fluid up, the phloem is the distribution network pushing the sugars and nutrients down, from the leaves to the branches, the trunk, and the roots.
And there was this highly specific, memorable detail in the journals that I just loved, connecting this invisible plumbing to, well, a gardener's worst nightmare.
Aphids.
Yes, aphids. If you look at an infested plant, you'll see the aphids are almost always clustered on the underside of the leaves. And it turns out they aren't just hiding from the sun. The vascular bundles in a leaf are super organized. The xylem, the water pipe, is on the adaxial surface, the top. But the phloem, the pipe, carrying all that rich, sugary sap, runs along the abaxial surface, the bottom.
The underside, yeah.
So those aphids are specifically tapping their microscopic mouth parts into the underside because they are directly tapping the syrup line.
It's a perfect example of how other species evolved to exploit the plant's blueprint. But, to fully grasp this engineering, we have to zoom in past the vascular tissue to the cellular level. Because pulling up a 300-foot column of water is incredibly heavy.
Yeah, how does it not just collapse?
Exactly. How do they support that weight without a skeleton? Animal cells are essentially squishy bags of cytoplasm. We have calcium-rich bones to hold us up. Plants use a completely different strategy. Their cells are surrounded by a rigid cell wall made of strong cellulose.
But a rigid hollow box isn't strong enough on its own, right?
No, it's not. Inside that cellulose wall is a large central vacuole. Think of it like a dynamic hydraulic cylinder or a water balloon inside the rigid box.
Oh, I see.
The plant actively pumps ions into this vacuole. And through osmosis, water rushes in to balance it out. The vacuole swells immensely, pressing outward against the rigid cellulose wall.
Oh, creating what's known as turgor pressure.
Yes, exactly.
So when I forget to water my houseplant
Which happens to the best of us.
and it physically droops over the pot,
Uh-huh.
I'm not just seeing a thirsty plant. I'm literally watching millions of microscopic cellular water balloons simultaneously losing their hydraulic pressure.
The walls sag because the hydraulic cylinders are empty. And the moment you water it, osmosis refills those vacuoles, the pressure spikes, and the plant physically stands back up.
That is so cool. But it also brings up a bigger issue. Because they rely entirely on this static hydraulic system, they're rooted in place. They have this amazing thermodynamic engine, but they can't run away from danger.
Right, they can never move their plumbing.
Which forces us to ask a question that feels a bit, I don't know, philosophical, but it's deeply rooted in their physiology. If a Venus flytrap can sense a bug to snap shut, does a plant feel pain when I trim my hedge or pull a weed?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the answer is a definitive no.
Okay, good, too.
Yeah, you can relax. When we look at evolutionary logic, pain isn't just a byproduct of damage. Pain is a highly specialized, metabolically expensive evolutionary tool. It requires a brain to process the suffering and nerves to transmit the signal.
Because the entire purpose of pain is to teach a mobile organism to flee. Like if I touch a hot stove, pain is the alarm system that forces me to pull my hand back.
Precisely. If you are a static organism, anchored to the ground, evolving a neurological system to experience the suffering of being eaten alive by a caterpillar when you literally cannot run away, would be a massive waste of evolutionary energy.
Just unnecessary torture, basically.
Exactly. Their evolution is shaped purely by life and death, not by suffering.
Okay, so they don't feel pain. But they obviously deal with stress, right? If they can't run, they have to be hyper-aware of their environment. How are they sensing the world without a brain?
Well, they respond to stimuli via hormones and incredibly sophisticated chemical sensors. Take the perception of time. A plant doesn't have eyes to watch the calendar, but it uses photoreceptor proteins like phytochrome.
Oh, right, sensing the day length, photoperiodism.
Yes. And the mechanism is brilliant. It's like a chemical hourglass. During the day, absorbing red light from the sun causes the phytochrome molecule to rapidly alter its physical shape into an active form, the PR form.
And then when the sun goes down, that active molecule slowly reverts back to its inactive PR form over the course of the night.
Exactly.
So by sensing that ratio at dawn, the plant knows exactly how many hours of darkness it just sat through. That's how it knows to drop its leaves for autumn.
It's a biological timer.
That's wild. And they also deal with stress through physical movement, right? Without moving their roots, like those nastic movements you see with the Venus flytrap.
Right, the rapid changes in turgor pressure.
Yeah, dumping water out of the hinge cells to snap shut in a fraction of a second. Or tropisms, like phototropism growing toward the light.
Yes, and that is driven by plant hormones, primarily one called auxin.
Ah, auxin.
When light hits one side of a stem, the auxin actively migrates to the shaded, darker side. And this causes the cell walls on the dark side to become more elastic. The vacuoles pull in more water, and those specific cells elongate far more rapidly than the ones on the sunny side.
So if the cells on the back get longer, the whole structure just bends forward, pointing right at the sun.
It's steering by manipulating asymmetric growth rates.
Incredible. And they also use pigments to deal with stress, like anthocyanins.
Oh, the internal reflectors.
Yes, people just think of those purple colors as autumn leaves dying.
Yeah.
But our sources point out that, especially in tropical shade plants, that deep purple underside is a clever internal mechanism. It acts like a mirror to reflect light back up through the leaf to maximize energy capture in low light.
It's a stunning adaptation. And when you compound all of these strategies, staying put, building complex plumbing, using the sun, you realize this strategy is incredibly successful. They didn't just survive. They conquered the Earth.
Which brings us to the sheer scale of their genetics. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Let's hear it.
So there are around 380,000 known plant species, right? And the vast majority, over 258,000 of them, are flowering plants, the angiosperms.
Right, and that evolutionary explosion in the Cretaceous period was so rapid and baffling that Charles Darwin famously called it an abominable mystery.
Because it just defied his theory of slow, gradual change. They just suddenly figured out how to co-opt the animal kingdom with nectar and fruit to move their pollen and seeds around.
Outsourcing their mobility.
Exactly. But the real nine-bender is their genome size. You would naturally assume humans have the most complex genetic code, but if you look at a common stalk of wheat, it has roughly 94,000 genes.
Wow.
That is almost 5 times as many genes as a human being. Or look at the Norway spruce tree. It has a massive 19.6 gigabase genome.
One of the largest ever sequenced.
Why does a tree or a stalk of wheat need a genetic instruction manual exponentially larger than us?
It all comes back to what we said earlier. They can't run away. Human civilization relies on this vast genetic library precisely because plants have to encode every single chemical blueprint to survive every environmental stressor they might ever encounter.
Right. A deep freeze, a drought, an insect attack.
All of it must be hard-coded so they can manufacture the exact chemical defense on demand. And out of all those thousands of edible plants, just 30 species provide most of our food.
Just 30.
Yeah. Furthermore, we rely heavily on their secondary chemical defenses for medicines. We derive everything from aspirin from the willow tree to Taxol for cancer treatments to quinine for malaria. We're just rating their evolutionary ingenuity.
We are borrowing their chemical warfare.
Exactly.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we want you to take all of this with you. The next time you look at a tree or a houseplant, don't just see a static object. You should see a thermodynamic engine, a chemical factory, and a silent observer of light and gravity that has a genetic code far larger than your own.
Absolutely. And that massive genome leaves us with one final, really unresolved thought to ponder.
Oh.
Our sources noted that plants are constantly exposed to severe physical stress and radiation, yet they can tolerate and actively repair their own DNA damage. Even using things like antifreeze proteins to stop ice crystals or heat shock proteins to survive extremes that would destroy animal cells.
Right, a redwood tree sits under cosmic radiation for 2,000 years and doesn't get cancer.
Precisely. So if plants have mastered the art of repairing severe DNA damage while living for centuries, could the secret to unlocking human longevity or even surviving extreme space travel be hiding right now in the genome of a simple backyard weed?
Man, that is something to think about. We've spent centuries completely blind to what's right in front of us. Makes you wonder what else we're missing.